Chris Rock got the last laugh. But did Chris Rock go too far? That's what I want to talk about this fine, nice Saturday evening. Stick with me. Yes, Chris Rock got the last laugh, but did Chris Rock take it too far? I'm sure by now you have seen the Netflix live special featuring that very funny man, Chris Rock. Well, I want to talk about it for a few minutes this evening. By the way, my name is Augustus Corbett, also known as the Minister of Justice, one member of the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every Saturday, we bring you a banging legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy an unjust legal system. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe, please. What are you waiting on? Go ahead. Hit that subscribe button. Like, share, comment. All right. Chris got the last laugh at the tune of $20 million, I understand. But did Chris take it too far? I'll tell you right now, I thought the set that he did was brilliantly put together. I mean, these guys are just brilliant comedians. Him, Dave Chappelle, they can just write something, make it funny and relevant, political, and so forth, all at the same time. I respect that. But did it take it too far? Let's talk about it. Listen, if you got comments, please share those comments. I'm going to read your comments and talk about them tonight. It's a very simple question. Now, you had to have watched the special in order for you to understand some of the things that I'm going to say, because I'm going to look at a few of the things that he said, and I'm going to end with my comments about what he said about Will, Jada, etc. But the things he said leading up to Will and Jada, they deserve comment as well. I'm seeing all over social media that some folks took strong offense to some of the things that Chris said, unrelated to Will and Jada. So I'm going to share my thoughts tonight. I took some notes. I watched it once, and then I watched it again so that I could make sure I understood exactly what Chris was saying. All right. So we are the night before the Oscars. That's another reason why I wanted to talk about this. And hopefully everything goes well. Tomorrow, this will mark 1 year after the very infamous slap across the face of Chris Rock by Will Smith on national, even international TV. I mean, it was a disrespectful, disgusting thing to witness. I want to say that off the bat. And to have been done by a person like Will Smith, of all people. I mean, who doesn't love Will Smith? Maybe not as many now. But who didn't love Will Smith? I mean, this was the golden boy. I mean, Will walked the straight and narrow all the way back from the Prince of Bel-Air, all through his movies, his rap career. I mean, he did it perfectly. And then he made that crucial mistake. No one should be defined by one moment. No one. Will included. But my. To have done that on international television in front of what would have been hundreds of millions of people by now. Wow. And like I said, it was disgusting. It was disrespectful for a man to slap another man like that. It was very, very disrespectful. And if you are a part of the African-American community, you know the backdrop of a slap. When a man slaps another man, that is the sort of almost the ultimate disrespect. So all of that went down. And Chris pretty much stayed quiet about it until this Netflix special. And then he let loose. And I mean, he let loose. Now, let me say up front, the language, the cussing, the N-word that he used repeatedly over and over and over again, I was just very disgusted by that, to be honest with you. I mean, he could have made the same jokes without all that cussing and the N-word. I completely hate it when I see African-American people using the N-word, willy-nilly. Do they not know what is in that word? The disrespect, the hatred, the degradation, the denigration, the lack of dignity. That's a very, very loaded word. I wish we would throw it in the garbage of society and never, ever, ever, ever use it again. And yet here Chris Rock is using it. I mean, repeatedly, as well as all other kinds of just awful cuss words. Now, listen, I am a committed Christian, so I don't like hearing those words. I don't like hearing those words. The audience didn't seem to be bothered by it. Maybe you weren't, but this is my commentary, so I'm expressing my disgust with the use of all those cuss words as well as the N-word. Now, so let's look at a few of the topics that Chris talked about. Let's start with the topic of wokeness. Yes, Chris dealt with wokeness. And the reason I want to talk about it is because I saw Ben Shapiro, who is a conservative talking head who goes around and commenting on racial issues. He's a white conservative. I disagree with 99.9% of what he says, maybe 95% of what he says. And he was on his YouTube channel that has over 5 million viewers. He was trying to, I guess, co-opt things that Chris said, like he and other conservatives have done with the word wokeness. They've completely redefined the word wokeness, totally redefined it. It doesn't mean anything that they have attached to it. I mean, they've attached everything bad, everything they hate, everything that they want to attack. It's almost like the N-word in disguise. So when Chris talked about wokeness, Ben Shapiro pounced. He used it to say, look, Chris Rock, a member of the left, a member of the liberal elite, is anti-woke. And again, the word doesn't mean anything that Shapiro and Fox News and a lot of other white conservatives have attached to the word. It just doesn't mean that. The word has traditionally meant to be aware of racial injustice. We use that word. I did a video on the word wokeness, and I researched and found that a singer, an African-American singer from early in the 20th century, way back, 1910 or 20 or something, was, I believe, the first person to use the word on a large platform. And he was definitely saying that African Americans needed to be aware of racial and social injustice. That's all that it meant. But they've co-opted it, twisted it, and have made it mean something else. So Chris made some comments on the word woke. Now, if you listen carefully, as I did the second time, Chris affirmed wokeness and social justice. He said it flat out. I'm for wokeness. I'm for social justice. He said it kind of fast because he was trying to get to his jokes. But he said it nonetheless. And let me back up and tell you what the name of Chris Rock's special is. It's Selective Outrage. And that title was the theme throughout all of his jokes. And that's what he was trying to point out when he talked about wokeness. So he talked about this store that sells, I think, yoga clothes or yoga pants or something, Lululemon. I've never heard of the place until I heard Chris mention it. And he talked about how Lululemon talks about it, doesn't believe in racism, doesn't believe in sexism, doesn't believe in, all those things. And good for Lululemon, all right? If I'm saying it correctly. If I'm not saying it correctly, look, don't get uptight about that. I've never heard of this store, never shopped in it, probably never will. Especially after learning, as Chris Rock pointed out, that they sell a pair of pants for $200, a pair of yoga pants for $200. And so what Chris was trying to say using Lululemon is, if you're all that woke, why are you selling $200 pants? $200 yoga pants. If you're all that woke, if you're that concerned about marginalized, oppressed people, why are you selling your pants at $200? Now, again, I don't know how much their pants cost. That could have been a joke. I'm not trying to say anything disrespectful about Lululemon. I presume they're great people. I have no idea. I don't know. But I'm trying to comment on Chris's point. He was trying to point out that this store, that this brand has selective outrage, right? It says that it disavows racism. It says that it disavows sexism. It says that it disavows social injustice, but then selling high-priced pants that poor people can't afford. So Chris was not attacking wokeness. Chris was attacking fake wokeness. That's what he was at, Ben Shapiro. He was not affirming your definition of wokeness. He was saying that there are folks out here who are selectively outraged over the issue of wokeness. They're sort of fake woke. All right? All right, victimhood. Chris talked about victimhood. And so he really made his point when he talked about how white men are claiming to be victims. Even Donald Trump claims to be, one of the biggest victims. The election was stolen from him and all sorts of things. And the prosecutor from Manhattan and the prosecutor down in Atlanta are racist toward him because they may get him indicted. So, if you listen to him closely, he, says he's a victim in so many different ways. And Chris pointed out, how is it that white men claim to be victims when they run everything and own most of everything? Chris says that he said that black people pretty much own a few record companies and vodka, couple of vodka brands. Other than that, there's no fear of us taking over the country. And then he pointed out that the January 6th, in fact, he said the January 6th riot, where mostly white men were angry and trying to overthrow the government, the irony was they're trying to overthrow the government that white men run. So that is, again, this selective outrage, this victimhood by people who are certainly not victims at all. Okay? Then he talked about Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. And he said about Meghan Markle, he said that she said she didn't know that the royal family was racist. Chris made the point very funny, in a very funny way, very humorously. He said, how in the world could she not know that the royal family, the British royal family, was a racist family when it is the family that created colonialism? He said that they invested in slavery like it was Shark Tank. He said that that the royal family is, I think, like some rap group, I forgot who he was, of racism. I mean, just trying to point out that everybody knows the racial history of the royal family. I mean, literally colonialized the British Empire, the old British Empire, literally colonialized the continent of Africa, many Asian countries, many Arab countries, and you didn't know that there was racism in the royal family, Meghan Markle? Well, that's what Chris said. I agree with that, although I have a lot more compassion for Meghan than Chris maybe does, because, whether she knew they were racist or not, the way they've treated her has been horrendous. It has been horrible. She has essentially exposed the royal family as the racist family that many of us already knew they are. Okay? All right. Then sticking with Meghan Markle, he said that Meghan Markle said that it was racist. Sorry, Siri just popped up here. Go away, Siri. He said that Meghan Markle said that it's racist when they asked what or how dark would their son be? And Chris said that's not racist because black people ask the same question. My wife and I had a discussion about that, and she, being the smart one in the family, she pointed out to me that Chris was wrong about that because it is racist, because at least rooted in racist, that we black people ask about, or inquire or take note of how dark a black child would be, because we know that in a racist society, colorism exists, and typically the darker the child, the tougher time that child will have. And that really, when I listened to it again, that really was Chris's point as well. That was the point he was actually making. He made that point because he pointed out how, if someone is as dark as one of the NBA ball players, Damon Green, I think, that person is more likely to have a more difficult time in America than someone who's light-skinned. Okay? So he was making that point as well. He jokingly said that it's not racism, but then he pointed out that it is colorism, and colorism is rooted in racism. All right. Divided America. He made a very good point there when he talked about how the folks over in other countries are more unified than America. Okay, let me see if I can find that here. He said America is so divided that if the Russians invaded America, half of the country would say, quote, well, let's hear them out. I mean, I think that was very salient. And he's pointing out there, I don't know what he's trying to point out, but he's pointing out there that there are folks in this country who are sympathetic to Putin. I mean, that's the way I took the joke, right? You know, what else can you say? But he did it in a comedic way. He did it in a roundabout way. But that's the only way that I could take it, to point out that nearly half the country would be open to the ideal of a Russian invasion. I hear that coming all the time from certain politicians, quite frankly. Then he talked about abortion, and this was really, really, really nuanced, I would say, very nuanced. He started out by saying he was at least partly pro-life because he's pro-life is definitely as far as his daughters are concerned, and I presume other people that he care about. So, he did. And by the way, I'm pro-life as well. Let me just say that and put that out there. But then he said he's pro-choice because he wants his daughter to have, complete control over their bodies, and he got a very loud applause for that. But then he came back and said, okay, I stand with women having complete body autonomy, complete choice in terms of what they do with their bodies. But then he did disavow that what is being aborted is a fetus, because he said, let's be clear, it is a baby that you're killing. It is a baby. I thought that was really, really, really powerful. I'm pro-choice, but let's be clear about this thing. These are not fetuses. These are babies that you're killing. So he embraced the pro-choice movement, but then undermined a very important part of the pro-choice narrative, that it's only a fetus that's being aborted. Chris said, no, it is a baby. All right, it is a baby. And he went on, and you would probably say in a tasteless way, said, kill all the babies you want. Kill them all the way, not just first, second, or third trimester. Kill them first semester of life, he went on to say. But that was after saying that these are babies that you're killing. All right? So, again, at least it was nuanced when he talked about the controversial issue of abortion. All right? And then he got to Will and Jada. Eventually got to Will and Jada. And at the beginning of that particular part of his show, he pointed out how much bigger Will is than he is. He pointed out that Will played the role of Muhammad Ali and Chris Rock played the role of Pookie in New Jack City, and all of us have watched New Jack City many times, and we remember that Pookie was a crackhead, and he was about that big, soaking wet then and now. So he basically said Will was essentially a bully, for picking on a guy that he knew he could beat. And he said that Will practices selective outrage. And why did he say that? He said that because of the relationship. Okay, let me bring up a couple of photos now on the screen. All right, he said that because of, as in Jada's word, an entanglement that she allegedly had with this guy named August Asina. I believe that's his name. I don't know anything about this dude at all. Didn't know he existed until this whole Will and Jada thing came out. Not my kind of music, not my kind of, situation. So I didn't know anything about him, but apparently or reportedly, allegedly, I guess. Well, she admitted it, actually. They even talked about it, like Chris pointed out. Jada and Will actually sat at the red table, and I watched that, and she admitted it and allowed Will to express how he felt about it. And I agree with Chris. That was weird. I mean, just weird. And Will looked humiliated even in that conversation. So, Chris's point was, what Jada did to disrespect Will was far, 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 far greater than the joke that Chris made about Jada. And Chris pointed out how so many folks, call Will, a bad name, a disrespectful name. Chris said he called him to console him and to offer condolences, and, Will didn't take his call. And so he was trying to point out, I love the dude and tried to be there for the dude. And who was it that he slapped? Me. The little guy, the guy who was in his corner, It was great kind of just hearing Chris get this off his chest, because I really was outdone when I saw Will slap Chris like that. My wife and I were looking at the Oscars, and when we saw what we thought we saw, we sat there for about 10 seconds. She was looking at the TV, I'm looking at the TV. We didn't look at each other for about 10 seconds, wondering, is this a part of the show? Did I just see what I think I saw? Or is this, Chris and Will, and remember Wanda Sykes and Regina Hall, and I forgot the other comedian, those folks could plan anything, so we thought it was just maybe a part of the show. And then I got on social media and started searching to see what other people were saying, and it looks like this was not a part of the show. This happened. So it was just disgusting. It really was. And and the thing that Chris said at the end of his show, I think was in some ways people can completely run with that and misunderstand what Chris was saying. I think I understood exactly what he was saying. All right. So at the end of the set, Chris said people have asked him, why didn't he hit Will back? And he said, because I have parents. And his parents taught him not to fight in front of white people. His parents taught him not to fight in front of white people. Now, before I tell you what Chris meant there, let me bring to the screen Big Willie. I like the use of Big Willie. My uncle's name was Big Willie. I had an uncle who was a big man and kind of a big man in the neighborhood, and we called him Big Willie, Uncle Willie. He was Uncle Willie to us, but folks in town called him Big Willie, and I think that's what Will used to call himself, Big Willie. So what did Chris mean? What did he mean when he said that his parents had taught him not to fight in front of white people? Did he mean that white people are all this, and you must behave yourself when white people are present? No, that's not what he meant. Here's what he meant. He was saying that it would have been embarrassing, even more embarrassing, for the black community, for him, that is Chris and Will, to be rolling on the floor, fighting, punching, scrapping in the middle of the Oscars, all over national television, international television, here are two black men, two big-time black men fighting at the Oscars. How would that have looked around the world? Can you imagine the headlines? Will Smith, Chris Rock fights at the Oscars. Will Smith, Chris Rock dukes it out at the Oscars. I am so glad that Chris Rock did not fight Will back. He deserves an applause for that. He deserves a huge applause for that, okay? For not just duking it out, running behind when Will walked away, with that look in his face. Imagine Chris would have ran behind him and tackled him, and they'd have started duking and fighting and rolling there, and oh my God. And do keep in mind that it was Will Packer, a very, very talented executive producer, a big dude in Hollywood. I mean, he does a lot of great work, an African-American, the first African-American to be the executive producer and director or whatever, however they do it out there. He was over it. That's what I'm trying to say. He was running things. And the moment this black dude is producing this show, two black men in the middle of the floor fighting, that's what Chris was saying. He did not want to embarrass the race. And I'm so glad he made that choice. His stature went way up. Not just in my eyes, but with many people. And he, by taking the high moral ground, oh wow. Again, he just elevated himself in so many ways. Again, I didn't like all the cussing, didn't like all the N-words and the things that he said. I put it this way. I endured the show that he did, the Netflix show. I endured it just to see what he was going to say about this situation, because I did not like that stuff. That stuff was, that was bad, Chris. But the way he handled himself at the Oscars last year, he deserves an Oscar, because not only did he save the Oscars last year, but I get a little bit choked up. Not only did he save the Oscars, he saved the African-American community a lot of embarrassment. That's what he meant when he said, don't fight in front of the white people. It's almost like saying, behave yourself when company is at your house. You know how your mama say you better behave when you're out, when you're in church, or when you growing up, when you were at the grocery store or something. One of the things those black mothers would tell you, you better not fall out in this store because I won't buy you some candy. My mom used to tell me I'm going to fall right out with you. We're going to be falling out together right up in here. So I guess you didn't care about embarrassing. But that's what Chris was saying, and I appreciate it greatly. He did the right thing, and so he's now, bagging a lot of money, again, to the tune of $20 million with this Netflix thing that he did. It's my understanding that he had a lot of book shows since then, because he really handled himself very well. I'm going to give him another applause. And now that he's gotten this off his chest, reportedly he's ready to move on and go on with his life, okay? And I hope he does. I hope we can all put this now behind us. I hope there are no surprises tomorrow at the Oscars. Let's just see. I don't think there will be. But it is the elephant in the room, and I'm sure security is going to be higher and all of that, So, but hopefully now we can put this behind us. Hopefully Chris can move on, and pray for Will. Pray that we all make mistakes. We all do bad things. No one, like Brian Stevenson, the civil rights lawyer, says, no one should be defined by the worst moment of their lives. And no doubt Will said that he had been working on himself. And so, he got the help he need. And so we can all move on now as a country. Worse things have happened. Worse things will happen. But, it's time now to let it go. Okay? That's what I wanted to talk about a little bit tonight with the Chris Rock situation. Thank you all for tuning in. Chloe and I didn't have our usual show today. We had something we're going to do it next week. We had something really, really, really powerful. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the Dominion lawsuit against Fox News. The Dominion lawsuit against Fox News. And if we have time, I'm going to throw some comments in about that bank that collapsed out in Silicon Valley. What is going on? Second largest bank failure in American history. Is it a sign of things to come? Or is it just one of those things? I don't know. We'll see. All right. So I'm going to let you go. I really, really appreciate you sticking with me a few minutes as I talk about this Chris Rock special. I'm out of here. You all have a good weekend. Peace.
That Corbin and Corbin legal team fighting for the rights of the people. That father-daughter team investing in the youth when the system ain't treating them equal. Providing truth for our people, we able to reach them. So anytime you get accused for a crime and Lord knows you ain't do it, we here to get you through it. Exemplifying prudence and glorifying God, making sure you're compensated for other people's doings. Our vision is to be one of the best. We're small enough to focus on your matter throughout the neighborhoods of Dallas. Working constantly and making sure your rights are protected. A firm team of lawyers, aggressive, effective. A team that has your back in the courtroom. Two well-spoken black lawyers in the courtroom. Investing time and resources when it's evident that you were treated wrong. Now you walking out of Dallas courtroom with a settlement. Corbin and Corbin, the father-daughter legal tag team that has your back in the courtroom. Our purpose is simple, to obtain the favor.
Ever since I was a child, I've always hated bullies. I was that child. If I saw another kid getting picked on in class or at the lockers, I would stand up for that kid. I couldn't stand seeing bullying. But there was one incident with a teacher that almost silenced me. It is my first clear memory of racism and discrimination. It's still so vivid and clear in my head. I remember one day we were in class one afternoon, and there was some school pep rally going on. My teacher decided to hand paint butterflies and flowers on our faces in anticipation of the school event. So we all went one by one up to her so that she could paint our face. When it was my turn to get my face painted, my teacher told me, "I can't paint your face because your skin is too dark." I was mortified, embarrassed, and deeply ashamed. In that moment, even though I wanted to say something, I couldn't get the words out. So I walked back to my desk, I sat down, and I stared blankly at my desk until the bell rang. When I got home from school that day, my parents knew something was wrong. But I remember being so reluctant to tell them. I really don't know why. When I finally did, obviously they were furious. And let's just say the next day at school was one to remember. It taught me to always stand up against racism, discrimination, and injustice. It fortified my resolve to fight for the vulnerable and voiceless. Just like my clients' voices are taken when they are wrongfully accused of a crime, subjected to banking while black, fighting for custody of their children, or fighting for just compensation from stingy insurance companies. My name is Attorney Chloe Corbett, also known as the Duchess of Justice. I am one half of Corbett & Corbett Law Firm and the Defiant Lawyers. We're here to fight for justice for the accused, the oppressed, the vulnerable, and the voiceless. You can find us in Dallas, Texas. Go to our website, www.corbettfirm.com. Improving lives and impacting laws.